Hello and welcome to another evening of frank conversation here on Hard Copy, coming to you from our studios in Abuja. I am Terry Ikumi. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused several countries to postpone national and sub-national elections. Analysts say this may have far-reaching constitutional implications if the situation remains the same in the next few months, and leaves a big legal question: could democracy be in danger? For example, Ghana had originally scheduled its presidential and National Assembly elections for December 7, 2020, but as it stands now, that election may have been postponed. Mali's National Assembly election initially scheduled for May 2020, Burkina Faso's presidential and National Assembly election earlier scheduled for November 2020, Senegal's local election due for December 2020, Tanzania's presidential and National Assembly election for 2020. We could go on to Egypt's House of Representatives election, and which was due for April and May, have all been postponed because of the pandemic. But on Tuesday this week, the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) reaffirmed its position that it will go ahead with the governorship elections scheduled for Edo and Ondo states in tandem with the timetable which it had released in February. Before the advent of the coronavirus in Nigeria, the Commission had earlier explained that its hands were tied, as these elections are constitutional elections whose dates cannot be moved arbitrarily. However, considering that we are in the middle of a pandemic and the nature of our elections and politicking respect no social distancing rules, and we're yet to adopt electronic voting, what are the options available to INEC, politicians, and voters? Our guest tonight is Oluwole Osazeuzi. He's INEC's Director of Publicity and Voter Education. Mr. Oluwole, welcome to Hard Copy.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Now, many countries have postponed their elections, as you heard in my introduction, but you're insisting on going ahead with yours despite some of the glaring realities that face us, the Edo and Ondo state governorship elections. INEC is insisting that it will go on. We understand the constitutional aspect of it, but it facing reality, are you projecting that by then we may have defeated this pandemic or made some progress that would allow us conduct this election?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, it is true that several countries have postponed their elections, but it's only fair for you to add that so many other countries have actually proceeded and had conducted their own elections. An example is South Korea. In Africa, I think Mauritania has also conducted, and there's several countries. Wisconsin, 2 Saturdays ago, conducted its own 2 weeks ago, conducted elections. So several other countries have actually conducted elections. Having said that, it's important to say that, look, we have constitutional deadlines to meet. We are obliged to conduct the elections because the Constitution has stated a window within which elections must be conducted at the end of the tenure of the governor. So in both Ondo and Edo, we must conduct those elections not later than 30 days to the end of tenure of the incumbent governors. And in the same way, not earlier than 150 days. So looking at things as it is, without saying put it at as close to possible as to the end of tenure to comply with the constitutional requirements, and also to see that hopefully the pandemic, the November and 10th of October for the conduct of the Edo and Ondo governorship elections respectively.
I know you mentioned South Korea, and South Korea as an example of a country that has conducted elections is quite interesting because of the kind of measures they had to put in place before that election was conducted. South Korea had to make sure that they maintained social distancing of about 2 meters apart. They provided hand sanitizers at every polling unit. They provided washing, a means for people to wash their hands at every polling unit. And one other thing they did was that 26% of their population had to cast their votes in advance, either by post or in early polling stations in a quarantine station. Those options, or particularly this last option, is not available to us.
Regrettably, some of these options are available to some South Koreans and foreign countries are not available to us because the law has specified how we can conduct elections. And unfortunately, advanced voting is not allowed. Voting by post is not allowed. The Electoral Act requires you to be present at the polling unit. So obviously, these are ideas coming through that everybody has said that we will not continue to do business as usual. But we have to amend our laws. And good thing about that is that in every challenge there's an opportunity. The opportunity has now come for us to re-examine our laws. Is it time? Are we mature enough to now have advanced voting, electronic voting, and other means of voting apart from, and for example, the survival of the well-being, the health of our officials, of voters, of accredited media and accredited observers is paramount. It's so basic, it's fundamental to our considerations. So yes, we will put certain measures in place. There will be physical distancing. I like to use that phrase, physical distancing rather than social distancing, because there will be physical distancing. Not all of putting it, we put sanitizers, put the abilities for people to wash their hands before they enter the polling. We insist on these basic hygienic issues before they even get into the polling unit as well. And our officials will be trained in such a way that they also will observe all the protocols, all the hygiene requirements, and the use of sanitizers both by themselves and those coming into the station will be emphasized as well. Yes, measures are going to put.
So some of the countries you mentioned, including South Korea, have peaked in terms of confirmed cases. We have not peaked yet in Nigeria. And from projections, a state like Lagos will most likely hit 120,000 by August, which is just about a month away from the first election for the Edo State governorship election. So if Lagos State, which is considered the state that's doing everything right to contain this virus, is to hit 120,000, and it's going to happen so close to the election, are you not worried about how successful this election can be, considering the kind of Nigerian crowd, if I may use that we have, and how to control that kind of crowd at a time like that? Also remember that there could be fears that people would not want to come out of fear of this virus. So we could also get to experience voter apathy.
Well, yes, there are all sorts of considerations going to play, including voter apathy. But Lagos has done a good job. I think both Edo and Ondo are also doing good jobs in combating this pandemic. The figures for Edo is about just over 111, if I recall correctly, as a day. And Ondo has much lower. I think it's just gone to double digits, probably single digits. But if Lagos is going to flatten the curve at about August, we are hoping Edo will follow suit about the same time. Don't forget, first of all, we're not conducting elections in Lagos. We're conducting in Ondo and in Edo, which are distance away from Lagos. And Lagos has a peak over 2,000 infected. But with the low figures we have, we hope they will use that peak before the time of the elections, which is September in Edo and October, late September in Edo, and 10th of October in Ondo. So yes, we'll work with authorities in both states. We'll work with authorities at the federal level and in both states to see what measures can be put in place to assure the public that we're doing all we can. In Edo, for example, there's relative movements. There's no complete lockdown as we had in Lagos, Ogun, and the FCT. But things are going, and their figures are still relatively low. But there will be movements. The curfews are now being imposed. We also will expect that and hope that at that time things will have flattened out a bit. But we're not going to take decisions on our own. We're going to consult and work closely with the experts on this and keep on consulting with stakeholders in that regard.
Are you saying,
Mr.
Oluwole,
we're studying how?
Are you saying that INEC is carrying out these measures in anticipation that we would have started experiencing great improvement just before the elections?
Well, not necessarily so, but yes, the elections are still several months away, 4 or 5 months away. So there's still a lot of time. But even without that, measures are ready over. So whether it's just a mild thing there or it's critical, all this will be taken into considerations in our planning. And we have started planning. And I'm sure you're aware that we're working very, very closely with the NCDC. We've even donated materials and help them with their logistics. So we've been working closely, and there'll be more synergy, more closer cooperation with the experts, with the health authorities in the conduct of elections, and both in the planning and implementation of the policies, taking into consideration. That's why we have that policy on the conduct of elections in pandemic.
Most people who look at this election try to place two things side by side: the Constitution and human lives. You mentioned how, it's close to the elections and you're hoping that something would have gone down, that the numbers would have dropped. If not, there are measures in place, there are engagements here and there. But let me draw your attention to countries like the United States and Europe, and the United Kingdom that are taking measures as well. The United Kingdom, the United States presidential election was supposed to be held in November. As it stands, that may be postponed, and we understand that Congress is considering amending the constitution to allow for interim government if it is postponed. We also know that the United Kingdom in March also postponed its election till 2021.
I'm not too sure whether it's such I'm not so sure that it's such a stark comparison. We have to look at the laws. The UK has conducted its own parliamentary general elections. So what you're talking about are probably provincial elections, maybe local government elections, and maybe their tenures have not expired. In this case, the tenures have expired. In the US, they have a distinction of never having to postpone a presidential election. And Wisconsin, as I said earlier, conducted its own elections. Several states have, during this time of pandemic, conducted elections. We compared with Europe as well. France has conducted municipal elections and the first round of those municipal elections. So these countries have conducted some of those elections. Some, admittedly, have put it aside. But in the United States, there was a pandemic 100 years ago, the Spanish flu. They did not. So we see no reason why we should go beyond what the Constitution says. If the Nigerian people feel that we ought not to be doing this, then the Constitution will have to be amended, or an interim measure has to be put in place, which will necessitate a constitutional amendment. We have sworn to uphold, taken oath to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the land. But yes, there are fundamental rights concerns here. The right to a clean environment, a healthy environment is constitutionally guaranteed, right? So is the right to vote, the right to freedom of choice, and the Constitution is supreme. We must try to obey that. So the conflicting priorities, how do we satisfy both? And we think we can put measures in place that will satisfy both. We use measure, but the win-win situation where we obey the Constitution and we obey the laws of the land.
Is that the kind of engagement you are having now? Because it seems like the kind of engagement you're having is to make sure that these elections hold. Are you engaging with the National Assembly as far as amending these laws, possibly amending these laws is concerned?
We haven't seen the need to, and I don't think the National Assembly has seen the need to. If it had, they probably would have called us for those discussions. But the lines of engagement, lines of discussion are open with the National Assembly. But we're engaging with all the other stakeholders, critical stakeholders in the electoral process about how to proceed. The courts are hearing cases, but they've found ingenious ways of going around them while maintaining the constitutional right of people to be heard in a court of law. So we're engaging the executive, we're engaging all the relevant authorities as to how to best, including the non-governmental organizations, the civil society organizations. We're engaging the media. How do we do this? How do we get your work done, get our work done in the circumstances which we find ourselves in? And for now, with the caution as it is, we have no choice but to proceed with caution. And that's basically what we're trying to do.
Why did you postpone the other by-elections?
Well, we're going in uncharted waters, and then all of us, not just in Nigeria, but elsewhere as well. And we thought it was safer and better, and the leeway was there. Those were not end of tenure elections. That's the difference. In this case, in Ondo and Edo, they are end of tenure. The governors cannot stay on beyond that last day in office.
This is where some people will say that it's necessary to take stringent measures. It might not fall under the purview of the Independent National Electoral Commission, but it will also suggest the kind of engagement you would be making. For example, in Poland, the presidential election there that was supposed to hold had to be postponed 4 days just before the election date. And that was just as the government was seeking an amendment to the Constitution, at least to reform some of these laws to allow the government either continue or an interim government be put in place. The worry for many would have to be this. Imagine that INEC goes ahead without maybe proper engagement as far as constitutional reviews are concerned or constitutional amendments is concerned, and then makes plans for this election, and then maybe just days before the election, it has to be postponed for the sake of preserving lives.
No, I don't have any fears. The fears that I have is that the fear of, because the other thing people worry about is the fear for their health. But we are taking those things into consideration, so we're addressing that. We're addressing that. And for those countries that postpone, they probably have looked at their own constitution and their laws and did what they had to do. We can postpone, but we cannot postpone beyond the window, beyond the threshold and the opportunity and the time given to us by the Constitution. So the case of Edo, where the tenure finishes on the expires on the 11th of November, if I'm not mistaken, 30 days to that time, we have to conduct the election. We have no choice, and we will proceed with doing just that. No person of authority can tell us not to proceed or to act contrary to the Constitution. We will not obey anybody who does that. We have to go with the Constitution.
Now, it seems like a good time now to start considering electronic voting. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. We agree entirely. In fact, we were going to undertake probably a pilot for Edo and Ondo, but looking at things, it will be difficult to do that because China has been closed. That's where you get those equipment from. Logistically and in view of the requirements of the Document Act, probably it is now well nigh impossible to do that. But going forward, we have said so that we intend to do this. We read that statement yesterday. We intend to do it with subsequent elections. So yes, we think so. We've been at the forefront of introducing more technology, and we continue to introduce more technology as long as the law allows us to introduce the technology. That's why for now, technology has gone into our voters register. So we now have an electronic voters register. We now have a smart card reader, electronic accreditation. We're going to experiment with the transmission of results, collation of results, and we're working with the National Assembly in that regard as well. We've had several engagements with them in Lagos about that, and there's a draft law in place that will help us in that regard. Yes, we're informed.
Why are we not considering what South Korea did, voting by posts?
Well, it's a question of confidence. Elections here are more contentious than almost anywhere else in the world. South Korea cannot compare to us when it talks about contention. And even with the system we put in place, you agree with me that the contention has been so pervasive, and so apparent. Just about every election, from the councillorship elections to presidential elections. If that is what Nigerians want, we will have no choice but to allow that. A lot of people argue, and we share their views. That, for example, we deploy more than 1 million people, 1 million officials on election day. They are deprived from voting. That shouldn't be right. So there should be some form of advanced voting for such people. Security men and women who are on the field on election day are deprived of their rights to vote. So also election observers, accredited media are deprived of that right. But perhaps for those categories of people, we're not adverse to it. We welcome it. Those categories of people should at least have a right to vote. And some people argue that even any voter should have a choice, as obtained in other countries.
I don't know what your policy guidelines will say, but I know that the card reader system will still be in effect for the Edo and Ondo governorship elections. Am I correct?
Will still be what? Sorry, I beg your pardon.
The card reader system will still be used in the Edo and Ondo governorship elections.
Certainly, card readers will be used. Certainly.
Okay, that will require that people place their thumbs on the card reader. Am I correct?
Correct.
Which is almost a no-no at this stage where physical contact is being reduced to the barest minimum. How do you hope to achieve that?
Very easy. You disinfect the machine
every time one person
and
votes.
You ensure that the people who are coming to vote, it's very easily be done. It doesn't take that long at all. In the same way as you use your sanitizers, it doesn't take you 10 seconds to use your sanitizer. So every voter will have to use a sanitizer, and the card reader can be disinfected each time. It takes a few seconds.
Okay, so when you talk with the National Assembly, what kind of reforms are you hoping that would help the process of electioneering at this time, considering this COVID-19 pandemic? Because lessons are now being learned.
Well, the first thing is the flexibility of the process. You don't have to put everything in the law. Because the danger in doing that now is that, look, this pandemic has come, it's been difficult for them to meet and things like that. And then, like you talked about advanced voting, we cannot do that now unless the law is amended. But if it was in our guidelines and we felt the need, Nigerians felt the need and the clamor for it, we probably would have amended our guidelines. We've been issuing our policies, amending our policies, bringing things up to speed with the realities of present day. So we could easily also do that if we had a framework law and details are in the guidelines. So that's one of the things, the framework. Probably as important or more important is the fact that there has to be an increased use of technology. Technology can help us solve a lot of problems, but it's not a magic one. We need confidence in the system. We need people to realize what we're doing. We have to sell these ideas to people. When engaging the National Assembly, we're talking about, and not just the National Assembly, in our retreat in Lagos, the Office of the Attorney General was represented, so the executive as well, because they have a role to play in lawmaking. If the president doesn't assent to the bill, then the bill does not become law unless and until it is overridden by the veto of the National Assembly. So engaging the critical stakeholders, that this is the thing. Technology. It's very, very important.
The Nigerian political system is quite different. The process of campaigning and face-to-face debates, INEC needs to monitor congresses and all that. How are you going to do this considering the pandemic now? Will that not be a challenge for this election?
It will be a challenge, but it's not an insurmountable challenge. Easier ways of doing this. And I said, we will leverage on technology. Yes, the campaigns have become the old way of doing things. And the law says in campaigning you must obey the laws of the land. So you cannot now campaign and bring 100 people to a place, or not asking them not to maintain physical distance or social distance. So you have to obey the laws. So, but there are other ways of campaigning. The use of the media is a very powerful weapon. The use of social media is also there. So there are ingenious ways: radio, TV, online media. You should use such that you don't have to disobey the laws of the land or endanger the health, well-being of society. So there are different ways of campaigning. You do monitor, we can also monitor online, and different ways of monitoring. Submission of candidates will probably be online. Accreditation of voters, accreditation of media will be done online. So we must, as like every other country, leverage on technology and do things differently, considering the health, as we say.
Mr. Luwale, let me draw your attention to...
It's fundamental. Yes, I'm agree.
Yeah, let me draw your attention to what some world leaders said, especially including the former President Goodluck Jonathan, on the danger of democracy. They said, and I quote, "Indeed, an election with few poll workers, closed polling stations, very low turnout, and little or no independent observation could potentially be as compromised as one delayed indefinitely. Which would INEC rather have, considering these?"
We have to conduct an election in accordance with our laws, pure and simple, as that. And our laws say that everybody who is eligible to vote is entitled to come out to vote. Their votes will be counted, and we will do all that. So we have to give the opportunity to citizens to exercise their franchise. They are registered, they'll be allowed to vote. When duties are imposed on you, you have to, you're duty bound to obey those things. Powers gives you a right, you have a discretion, but a duty, a responsibility is thrust on you. And if you've sworn an oath to discharge that responsibility, you are honor bound and legally bound to do it. That is the basis for which we are going ahead with this election, complying with what the Constitution says and discharging our obligations under the Constitution.
You sound very confident of conducting a very successful election, even though it's going to be questioned considering the pandemic in comparison to when we didn't have a pandemic. What exactly is fueling your confidence? And do you envisage any challenge?
Well, you see, elections is a process that involves multiple stakeholders. And we have engaged and will continue to engage with stakeholders. We had an engagement with CSOs during the week, a couple of days ago. We also had an engagement with the media. And all were determined that the elections should proceed. We're encouraged by that. The media executive said, look, we have to proceed. The UJ president was there. Several notable CSOs were there in a separate meeting. And it was clear, there was no question about it. The political parties are with us. So all the critical stakeholders are the people of Edo, and the people of Edo are desirous of having to have a say and discharge and vote, because they have a choice to either retain the incumbents or put anybody there. But their choice has to be respected. They must be afforded that choice. So it's not just INEC. On the contrary, the stakeholders want it to happen, and we will let it happen, working closely with health authorities.
Is there anything related to this pandemic that could possibly make INEC reschedule this election?
Look, we don't have powers to reschedule elections beyond the dates and times stipulated in the law. We cannot blindfold ourselves to the provisions of the Constitution. So, no, there's nothing I can think of that will warrant that. If there is a war, and because the Constitution says so, right? If there's a war and it's impossible to conduct an election, then we will be obliged to. The National Assembly has to do, and the President has to do what they have to do. But in talks of war, there's a formal declaration of war, and there's a declaration. You don't just say this is a war. It has to go through a process and declare that war. But for a pandemic, it's not in the Constitution. I don't see those authorities doing that.
Mr. Oluwole Uzi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for finding time to speak with us on Hard Copy. Well, that's the show tonight, but it's never over until we hear from you. What measures would you want the umpire and politicians to put in place and take as we undertake these off-cycle elections? Please speak to us using the handles showing on your screen. Thank you so much for watching. I am Terry Ikumi. Good night.